With the news that Kate Mulgrew will be reprising the role of Captain Kathryn Janeway in Star Trek Prodigy, the internet and myself, and hopefully you, are buzzing with excitement. I mean, to be honest, at the time of this video being made, we've been promised over 20 plus weeks of fresh Trek in the year that is 2020. We're sport for choice, and you know what? Season 1 of the fantastic Star Trek Lower Decks wrapped up. It was great. Season 3 of Discovery is doing the rounds, plus Star Trek Picard Season 2 and Star Trek Strange New Worlds are on the horizon. We are spoilt for choice. Star Trek Prodigy promises to expand the universe to something a little bit more child-friendly though, something that Discovery, Picard and Lower Decks are most definitely not. And having Janeway return as a guide and mentor for this show is an excellent move on the producer's parts, as it links the new series to the rest of the franchise whilst also bringing the wonderful Kate Mulgrew back into the Trek fold. With that in mind, it's an excellent time to revisit all of the times that Janeway shone bright in Star Trek Voyager. For 7 years, like no other, she led that ship with tenacity and courage, dealing with the unknown in a way that had barely been seen since Kirk's days. Alright, so let's do it then. These are 10 times when she was truly the greatest, I repeat, the greatest captain of them all. Energize. Number 10, reason will out. Janeway was perhaps more than any of the other captains in Star Trek, the greatest scientist of them all. Very soon after becoming stranded in the Delta Quadrant, she is faced with a barrage of decisions to better ensure the running of her ship, including finding a new chief engineer. B'Elanna Torres had distinguished herself at this point by breaking Lieutenant Carey's nose, but she was also a brilliant engineer. Look, handy with the hands in more way than one. You need to be when you're on Voyager, as we find out as the seasons continue to go on. Anyway, Janeway was hesitant at first about giving her the top spot based on the previous nose-breaking incident I just mentioned, yet when she picks Torres to accompany her to investigate the singularity, she develops a better understanding of the former Marquis. Janeway can clearly see that behind Torres's heat and anger, there's a fantastic engineer who truly knows her craft. She is unafraid to challenge the captain, but only in the name of doing the right thing. Janeway promotes Torres to chief engineer, showing not just confidence in her abilities, but also showing her faith in someone who needs it the most. Number 9, playing the Devore like a fiddle. And they thought they could trick Janeway with a little booty call. I mean, come on, seriously. Counterpoint is Kate Mulgrew's favourite episode of Star Trek Voyager, and it's not hard to see why. Here, there are so many different games going on between the Devore and Starfleet that it can honestly get a little bit confusing at times, but what is never in question though is that our Janeway was in control from the first moment to the last. The Devore commander attempts to delude Janeway, believing that he is defecting from his people and wants to help Voyager to get telepathic refugees they are harbouring to safety. Despite all the appearances to the contrary, Janeway doesn't buy it for a second, and when the inevitable reveal comes, she embarrasses him by getting those refugees safely on their way. Now, with the stain of this failure on their record unappealing, the inspectors allow Voyager to continue on its way uninterrupted, proving once again that trying to outwit the Janeway is never really a wise move to make. What is the icing on the cake though is the cool, calm way she sits beside the inspector on the bridge as he makes a complete fool of himself. Mwah! Beautiful. Number 8, she knew when to quit. As kind and caring as Janeway could be, she also displayed on several occasions that when you attack her on her ship, she will fight back. Yet in Equinox, she was faced with one of the greatest betrayals of them all. Captain Ransom of the USS Equinox is discovered to have abandoned his Starfleet ideals, murdering innocent creatures and leaving Voyager to their mercy along the way. All in the favour of getting a little bit of extra warp juice. To say that Janeway takes this personally, that's an understatement, because she pursues the ship with everything she's got, hunting them across the sector. She slips farther and farther into her anger, continually butting heads with Chakotay, who's telling her to chill the F out and keep it Starfleet. She's consumed by the anger she feels. She's unable to let it drop, and no one can tell her otherwise. This has all of the hallmarks of a shoot-to-kill mission. She destroys one of the Equinox's nacelles with one of their precious / ever-replenishing torpedoes, forcing it to drop out of warp. At the last moment, however, though, Ransom sees the error of his ways and reignites the last spark of Starfleet inside him. Janeway immediately backs down, knowing that the hunt is over. She saves the crew members of the Equinox and later discusses this with Chakotay and the implications of her obsession and how really she almost lost her Starfleet edge. Number 7, she's an absolute badass. Now, Janeway is a scientist, but when it comes to kicking ass, She could do it like the best of them. In the third season episode, Macrocosm, the now somewhat infamous shot of her kind of gearing up in complete survival mode is precipitated by Voyager's invasion by an initially tiny virus that becomes, well, big and very deadly. Janeway proved time and time again that there was nothing she wouldn't do to ensure the safety of her crew, sometimes to almost dangerous levels of determination. And in this episode, she suits up and becomes a one-person army battling her way through the ship to take down these viral hosts. Whilst there is a slight issue with the continuity of the episode, like how and where did she manage to get a first contact error phaser rifle? Well, I don't know. The end result is a fantastic example of why it is a very, very, very bad idea to mess with Kathryn Janeway and her starship Voyager. Number 6, ramming the Krenim temporal weapon. The captain goes down with the ship. Hardly a new idea, but Janeway managed to turn a suicide run into a beautiful leap of faith, ramming the now near derelict Voyager into the Krenim temporal weapon, resetting all of the damage that they had done. Magic reset buttons can be extremely frustrating, alright? Consequences help our characters to learn and grow. This was something that made Deep Space Nine largely successful, and it achieved that by making sure there was consequence. And Voyager sometimes floundered around this, yet the Year of Hell is the exception to the rule. This two-part episode is often voted among the best in the entire show's catalogue. Why? Well, it's a what-if scenario. What if Voyager never got resupplied, never managed to fix repairs, and was constantly on the back foot? Basically, what happened if Star Trek Voyager was Battlestar Galactica? But anyway, that's for a different list. Yet this episode paints such a grim light on that though we only see it for 2 episodes, we get everything we need. Janeway is almost maniacal when it comes to safeguarding her crew and her ship. She refuses to abandon Voyager all the way to the bloody end. She willingly sacrifices her own life on the chance that she will return the galaxy to the shape it had been in originally. It's a leap of faith for sure, and depending on whether or not you believe in an afterlife, it was the end of that particular Janeway, going out in a blaze of glory to save lives. Number 5, joining 2 crews together. Now, stay with me on this one, because this is not as simple as it sounds. With Voyager and the crew of the Voyager-J stranded in the Delta Quadrant thanks to her decision, Janeway is faced with a choice. She can either put the Marquis in the brig for 75 years, or find a way to work together. She and Chakotay work out a deal. The 2 crews join together, forming one Starfleet crew. Whilst it would have been quite something to see the discussion that led to this, it makes the most sense by far. Voyager is the surviving ship. It just makes sense for her to do this. Chakotay accepts the position of first officer, meaning that he is still in a position of power, but he's got to do it the Starfleet way, not the Marquis way. And by the end of Caretaker, the 2 crews may be in the same uniform, but there's still a lot of work to do bringing them truly together. Yet over the course of 7 years, Janeway not only brings them together as colleagues, but ensures that they become a true family. She gets former Marquis back into the Starfleet fold. This is a big deal, and they all end up serving vital roles on board the ship, though some of them certainly had issues along the way. When Voyager makes contact with Starfleet in Season 4, Janeway's a little surprised by the request for information on the Marquis, because to be fair, it's probably slipped to the back of her mind that she's not working with people that are part of Starfleet, but people that were working against them in some ways. And Chakotay gently reminds her that none of them have ever forgotten their former allegiance. They just have a new allegiance now. Number 4, no crewmen forgotten. In the 6th season episode Good Shepherd, Star Trek Voyager offered what was in many ways their answer to Trek Lower Decks. 7 of 9 identifies 3 crewmen, Telfa, Tau and Harren, who are not performing to adequate efficiency. As they can't be transferred off the ship, Janeway decides to push them into revealing the best of themselves. Taking them on an away mission, she has to deal with these 3 people that she doesn't really know very well, but she still must command. Whilst both Telfa and Tal are eager to work alongside and please the captain, Harren has no such interest. He simply just wants to work on his scientific theories. However, when the Delta Flyer runs into trouble, all of them must come together to solve the situation, proving that even in the lower decks of the ship, there's still skill and talent. Janeway, whilst perhaps not going so far as to call them friends, pushes them just far enough for each of them to hit the ground running, giving some of the lesser seen crew a challenge and, more importantly, a win. Number 3, she listens to her first officer. Janeway and Chakotay were an excellent duo throughout the 7 years it took Voyager to get back home. They were each a foil for each other, whilst also becoming close friends. There was a hint at romance even, yet the writers thankfully decided that it wasn't in their best interests and the show was much stronger for it. Okay, so perhaps they never bumped middles. That didn't mean that they didn't butt heads from time to time, sometimes in extreme ways. In Equinox, they nearly come to actual blows, with Janeway conceding at the end that Chakotay may have had cause to stage a mutiny, yet even in that situation, they knew when to draw the line. In Scorpion Part 2, Janeway has forged an alliance with the Borg, something that Chakotay is very against. However, as first officer, he does his duty. But when Janeway is wounded and incapacitated, however, he makes the decision to decompress the deck that the Borg are on, though not before 7 of 9 manages to bring them into fluidic space. When Janeway wakes, she is peed off, but still very receptive to Chakotay. She feigns relieving him of duty, keeping him instead as a backup plan for Seven's inevitable betrayal. They may not always agree on everything, but Janeway knew that she had a strong officer in Chakotay, trusting his judgment and advice. Number 2. Rescuing 7 from Unimatrix 01. The arrival of 7 of 9 on Voyager spelled a new era for the show, and tensions behind the scenes also. It's no secret that initially Kate Mulgrew and Jerry Ryan were not very close in real life, nor even friendly for much of their time together at all. This has since been healed, thankfully. On screen, however, it was a testament to both Seven and Janeway that they were clearly family from almost the first moment that they met. Janeway takes it upon herself to coach the former drone, bringing her back to humanity, even if there are plenty of bumps along the way. One such bump comes relatively early when Seven beams a wounded member of species 8472 onto a Hirogen ship, condemning it to certain death. But the two come back from this, and by Voyager's 5th season, there is a true sense of trust between them. In Dark Frontier, the Borg Queen takes a renewed interest in Seven, blackmailing her into rejoining the collective. Janeway is having none of it though, and she commits to rescuing Seven from the heart of Borg territory. Armed with a phaser rifle, Janeway walks into Unimatrix 01, the Queen's inner sanctum, and she walks away with Seven. Anyone will tell you that facing down one drone is bad enough. Janeway faced down their whole collective and came out with family. Number 1. She got them home twice. Whether as Captain or Admiral, Kathryn Janeway gets her ship home, but that's not to say that it doesn't take a toll along the way. In the series finale Endgame, Admiral Janeway travels back through time to get her ship 16 years sooner than in her own reality, all to save 22 lives that would otherwise have been lost along the way. For Janeway, the single most important role that she plays is that of caring for the crew, whether it's seeking new technologies and means of safeguarding them, or in guiding them through difficult times. If Janeway had to alter the past to save additional lives, then that's something she's gonna do. It makes complete sense that Janeway of all people will blast the Temporal Prime Directive to bits to ensure that those under her command get back alive. And upon meeting her former self, she not only manages to get them home, but between them, they also managed to deal a crippling blow to the Borg. Underestimating this captain is a grave error. The excitement levels at seeing her come back for Star Trek Prodigy are set around warp factor 10. Wait, do we want to talk about Janeway's experience with the warp threshold? Her and Paris, the salamander sex, and... No, let's save that for another list, shall we? Right, okay, there you go. 10 times Janeway was the best captain in Star Trek. What are your best Janeway moments? Let us know in the comments below. Or feel free to chuck a Janeway sounding energize into the comments to let us know you got this far in the video. Also, don't forget to give us a sub and a like. We're also on Twitter too, at Trek Culture. Alright, too, I'm all over the social medias at Marcus Bronzy, MarcusBronzy. Plus, I got a cool podcast called How to Kill an Hour. Check that out where you listen to yours. Until next time, this has been Trek Culture. Stay blessed.